Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm recording this video anonymously out of respect to my siblings, although the perpetrator has died. I knew something wasn't right with my family dynamics from an early age, really. There was my father, my mother, and me and my siblings. And my relationship with my dad wasn't always great. Lots of girls picture the relationship with their dad as, daddy's little girl sitting on his knee, getting swung around the room and everything. Unfortunately, mine was much different. I was scared of my dad, and there was a reason for this. So today I'll be talking about what happened to me, why I didn't tell anyone, how I felt after, and why I think if something like this has happened to you, then it's really important that you tell someone. So when I was little, I always remember being very scared to be naked around my dad. I didn't know why, but I guess I knew deep down that something wasn't right. So when I think I was about 3, I was going for a booster injection. For some reason, my dad always took me to the doctors, never my mum. And I promised, I made my dad promise that I wouldn't have to pull my underwear down. And he said, yeah, I promise. And we went to the doctor's office, and of course the booster was in the bottom, so I had to pull my underwear down. And I can remember panicking because he was there, and going into the corner of the doctor's office to hide and not wanting to go over to him. And even from such an early age, I can remember feeling very scared of him, and particularly around my private areas, that I had been violated somehow, but I didn't quite know how. And when I was a bit older, I was in the bath. I think I must have been about maybe 9 or 10 years old. And we didn't have shampoo. I came from a very poor family. So we had washing up liquid to occasionally wash our hair. And I'd put far too much of that in. And honestly, trying to rinse that out of hair is a nightmare. So I called my mum in to come and help me, and she couldn't. She kept rinsing and rinsing with the jug of water, and nothing happened. So she then called my dad in. Then I was instantly frozen. I knew that I was terrified, and I knew that I didn't want him in the bath. I was naked and I felt very afraid. And I can remember when he came in the bathroom, I could see my brother outside peering into the bathroom at me, and we gave each other a kind of glance. And I don't know, I kind of think that he kind of knew that something wasn't right, or maybe that I was feeling, super uncomfortable. Anyway, my dad rinsed my hair successfully, and I can remember after feeling so relieved that nothing had actually happened to me. And that feeling of relief at that age, and that worry, quite frankly, with a parent is not normal. And I've always, like I said, when I was younger, I always felt a bit nervous around him. I can remember, when I was in bed, him crossing across the landing to go to the bathroom in his at night time, and I didn't like, seeing him naked and things. So I always kind of felt that something went on, but I wasn't quite sure what. With regards to bedtime, for example, we would be carried up to bed when we fell asleep in front of the television. So I can't really remember kind of much. I can remember him carrying me up the stairs and, being very sleepy, but not much after that. And then I discovered that my mum was actually being drugged and sexually abused. As well as her telling me that after he died, when I was younger, I'd actually caught him putting stuff into her tea and stirring it frantically, looking agitated over his shoulder to see if anybody had noticed. So I do wonder if something like that happened to me too. So I fast forward to when I was about 12 or 13 years old, my mum was out and I was sitting on the sofa with my dad. I'm not sure why she was out at the time. She was very much a recluse. I'll explain more about that in a minute, but she didn't have any friends. She didn't have a life, really. So I'm not sure where she was, but it was his chance to basically do something. So we were on the sofa and he started kind of tickling and toy fighting, punching me, just jokingly. And then kind of I did it back to him, and it got to the point where we got to our feet. And then obviously it took a bit of a bad turning. So it got a bit aggressive. And then he grabbed me from behind, picked me up off the floor and started thrusting himself hard at me. And he wouldn't let go. And I don't know if he was trying to take his trousers off. I don't know, what his plans were, how far he was going to go. All I did know was that I needed to escape. So I bit his hand really hard and ran out of the house sobbing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know, if I should tell anyone. And if I did need to tell anyone, who should I tell and what the consequences would be. I guess one of my really big fears was that if I told my mum, that she would just tell my dad what I told her and we would just continue living like that, and he would basically do something worse to me, possibly, violent. So after this happened, I came back into the house and my dad was there with this very angry look on his face. So I just picked up a shoe that was by the door and threw it at him. And I think I was shouting that, why? And he just picked the shoe back up and threw it right back at me as hard as he could. And then I ran up the stairs because my sister and her boyfriend were up there. And I was just absolutely sobbing. And they asked me, what had happened. And all I could say was that Dad threw a shoe at me. They didn't question me anymore about why I was so kind of upset. But I'm surprised that she didn't actually. But that's when I knew basically that there had been something going on, and also there could be something else happen in the future. So that's when I basically had to completely shut down and become very avoidant of him. Telling you a bit more about my family. So, as I said earlier, my mum was a bit of a recluse. Basically, my dad was very much a sexual deviant towards her. He would, as I said, he'd already drugged and sexually abused her. He also pimped her out to various people and would use it as blackmail. So if she didn't sleep with these people for money, also pose kind of for pornographic purposes, commercially, or, I think you didn't have the web back then, but I know there were some kind of magazines that took pictures of her. Then he said that we would go hungry, we wouldn't have any Christmas presents. So, my mum basically had probably one client a week. There was this usual one that would come every week who was absolutely repulsive. I know that she got £20 a time. And then I know that when my sister was 16, he wanted to take pictures of her. And then one day when I think I was about 13, for some reason I found myself alone in a room with him. He came in to see me, and then he asked if he could start taking some photos of me. And I just acted innocent. I pretended I didn't know what he meant. I knew very well what he meant. I saw what he'd been doing. And although we're children, we knew damn well what was going on behind those doors. My dad, when she had a client with her, would stand at the door and listen in. He also had these little tape recorders with those tiny little cassettes you used to get, and he used to plant those in her room, or their room, and then he would listen to them later on to, I don't know, he told us they were talking. We knew very well that they weren't talking. And I remember after the event, she would be challenged about how much money she got off each of the clients. So, yeah, my childhood was basically completely ruined by this event. As I said, every girl dreams about this Disney dad, that they can run to. And, I couldn't even go near mine. I put a lock on my bedroom door myself, so just like a little bolt. And every time, as soon as I got in that room, I would bolt that room. And after that, my relationship with my dad was quite tense. We were kind of always kind of bickering, I guess, just because I guess he knew what he'd done and he knew that I knew. And one of the things that really upset me was as I got older, He would continually say to us, oh, these people who interfere with children, that was the terminology he used, they are just monsters. I don't know how anyone can interfere with children, just monsters. And he would say this every time I saw him. And I know he was trying to test me. He was trying to test me to see if I remembered what had happened. And I did not say anything. And even one of the last phone calls I ever had with him before he died, I just wanted to say to him, you know, and obviously, you know, when they're kind of getting to the end of life, I just wanted to say to him, you know, why did you do that? But, you know, thinking about it now, I know why he did that. It's why all these people do it, because they can manipulate you and they can get away with it, not for any other reason, you know, and that disgusts me. And one of the very, very last things he said to me, he said, Sarah, I've done some very bad things. You will never find out about them and I will take them to my grave. What a thing for a dad who's dying to say to their daughter. And that just basically summed up everything I kind of needed to know about him. I know that when I was younger, bad things happened. I'm not stupid. I know that my brain has probably forgotten about most of them to protect me. But when I was 12 or 13, what he did to me that day, I will never forget. And as I said, I never told anyone. I don't think I was worried about, you know, all the family getting split up and going into care. I think I was worried just about things not changing and having to stay there with him because, you know, he was a violent man. He would beat my mum black and blue. We would get hidings and hit as well, you know, but, you know, she was strangled. She couldn't go out some days because she had bruises around her neck. You know, if I was to tell her, and she mentioned it to him, which was, to be honest, quite likely, then, you know, I could have ended up just beaten. So I spent all my teen years basically being pretty miserable, being very isolated. I spent a lot of time in my room, a lot of time going out. And when I did go out, I liked to have a good time. So my aim when I went out was to get as drunk as I could. And I guess the other things I want to say is, you know, I just felt hyper vigilant because that was the start of other things as well. So I will record another video about another incident that I had with my brother-in-law who was grooming me, you know, who I actually saw as a brother more so than my actual blood brothers. Yeah, but it does seem that, you know, when you're a victim to this kind of thing, it can mean that you're a victim multiple times, and you know, and this has to end. I guess one of the things I wanted to mention as well is after this happened, although I mentioned that, you know, I avoided him and I had a lock in my door, I just felt so rubbish. I contemplated taking a handful of pills. I remember that so vividly because the only reason I didn't was because I used to do this thing called a 24-hour famine where as a child you would get sponsored by your friends and family friends to not eat for 24 hours to raise money for starving children in Africa. And I remember thinking if I did go, then when I was older that I wouldn't be able to help these people, which sounds a bit I don't know, a bit cheesy, but that was the reason I didn't want to end my life then. So who I told, I basically didn't tell anyone about it for years. I guess if you looked at my school reports, you could tell something wasn't right, but no one at school knew. I had a period of, more absence than usual in that year at school. And that's just because, I don't know, I felt like I kind of gave up. And then the first person I did tell was my first ever serious boyfriend when I was 20. And he said, no way, not your dad. He's such a lovely guy. And that just about says it, doesn't it? Because these predators, they come across as lovely people, male or female, they come across as lovely people. They get close to the family. They say things you want to hear. They're charismatic. They're charming. They're everything you want them to be. But deep down, they're monsters. So my message to everyone out there who has suffered anything like this is please talk to someone, please tell someone. When I actually told the second person ever, who was my now husband, who obviously believed me, I just felt a massive weight had lifted, and he validated all of my feelings and helped me feel more confident, helped me have more worth, and also help me be less hypervigilant. So if you are out there and you are listening to this and you can resonate with this, please speak to someone. Don't suffer alone. You don't need to, and it will affect the rest of your life if you don't. Also, sorry, just something I wanted to add as well is I believe that my dad went on to harm others after me. Friends, younger children, etc. And when I had children myself, and I obviously had to visit my mum, I could not settle with him and my child in a room. I took her to the toilet even when we visited my mum up until the age of 6. I would not let her be one moment alone in that room with him for even a second. That is no way to live. Your children will also pick up on your anxiety. So please, please, put your thoughts down on paper if you need to, but tell someone.